The pile of dirty laundry on the basement floor was finally starting to shrink. The pile of clean clothes on the dining room table was starting to take over the room. The new washing machine was earning its price. The dryer was starting to make scary noises, but Benny was going to take advantage of his good day. Tomorrow was tax all day, and for the next 2 days, he was going to be either too sick or too stoned to deal with laundry. Worse yet, the ounce that Marjorie brought over was not an ounce anymore. It hadn't even been announced to begin with. At least that was what Benny suspected. He wondered how he was going to cope with chemo, if it took that much pot to quell the revolt of his insides. It did make him feel better, albeit non-functional. He never realized that he had so many sheets. He didn't remember buying any, ever. There were sheets of every color and pattern. He did remember changing his bedding a lot, though. He was thankful for every sheet in the pile. Some of them had to go through the washer twice, and some even a third time. He wondered what had possessed him to think that he could deal with cancer by himself. The people from church were indispensable. They brought food. They took him to the hospital and back. They sat with him through the worst parts of chemo. They prayed with him when things got tough. Best yet, they kept the memory of Miranda alive for him as he walked through the hell that raged inside his body as the strong cocktail of antimetabolites and alkylating medications fought the alien cells that had scattered themselves throughout his body. He wasn't sure which was worse. The methotrexate made him weak and he sweated profusely and couldn't control his bowels. The Taxol made him nauseous and gave him the king of headaches. He would see blood in his vomit sometimes. Several people from church had been through it themselves, and the support they gave him made him want to continue living, even though his body was telling him that further life would be entirely too much trouble. The church people didn't know about Marjorie and the natural substance she brought. Benny thought it best to keep them ignorant of it. But then, there were a lot of things that Benny felt that way about, so there were many things that the church people didn't know about Benny. Marjorie was concerned about the tracks in Benny's arms. Several veins had burned out from the chemotherapy. She had never seen anyone get tracks from chemotherapy before, and she went to the library and read everything she could find about the drugs that the doctor was giving him and the way they were administered. She wished the trip to Benny's house wasn't so far. The walk from the bus stop wasn't so bad. It was the wait for the transfer bus to the west end of town, which only went through 4 times a day. That taxed her patience. It made for a lonely and boring trip. Charlene was retreating from life again, and Marjorie really didn't like leaving her home alone for the length of time necessary to minister to Benny's needs. Charlene had rediscovered Fyodor Dostoevsky and was reading the brothers Karamazov. She was identifying with Smedley Elizaveta. Marjorie considered that to be pre-suicidal behavior, because everyone she had known who was allowed to stay in that frame of mind for any period of time, was dead now. Charlene, you have been in the house entirely too long. I went to the library. They let you scan out your own books too. I went to the office supply store. Did you buy anything? No, but in the past month, who have you spoken to? Well, you and... My point exactly. Come on, fix yourself up. We're going to visit a sick friend of mine. You mean we're going to spend the afternoon waiting for buses? You need some sun and fresh air. I would rather stay here and read. Yeah, thick books of depressing literature. I enjoy them. I can imagine a wave of student suicide if you start teaching again and assigning those books. Why? Adolescents and young adults are naturally depressed anyway, and judging from the books I have seen you reading, after any 3 of them, they would be clinical. They are masterpieces. They're depressing. I've read some of them. I would rather have you reading King and Barker or Grisham again. It's better than the trash you've been reading between those medical texts. What's wrong with an occasional Harlequin romance? All they are good for is lighting a fire in your fireplace. They have no lesson, moral, or recognizable plot, and they have no depth, except emotion. Yeah, and that's what you're hiding from. I'm not hiding. What do you call what you are doing, then? I'm not hiding. That's what I'd call it. You stay indoors all the time. You don't socialize at all. You are single, attractive, intelligent, and cultured. I can count on one hand the number of people you have talked to in the last year. If that's not hiding, I don't know what it is. Leave me alone. No. I have done that too much. Look at you. You have been wearing that same nightgown for 3 weeks. You leave your chair only to eat, go to the bathroom, or to go to bed. I'll bet you even wore it to the bookstore and the library. I got dressed. When? I haven't seen it. Okay, okay, I'll go. Can I take something along to read? No way. You are going out into the world, and so help me, you are going to interact with people. I have been interacting. With who? With whom? Whatever, come on, get yourself dressed. I know you have other clothing. I went and got it for you from your apartment. Not even a magazine? No. What will I do while I am waiting for the bus? The same thing I do. Scope out guys, shop, eat junk food. Come on, I promise you. We'll have fun. Besides, you might like Benny. He's cool. He really is. I have to give him back his prosthesis so he can go out. He goes out for chemo, doesn't he? If you call driving to the hospital and back, going out, I guess he does, but he hasn't been out socially since I met him in Nashville. See? Other people stay home too. Most of the time, he's too sick to move. The rest of the time, he eats and does his housework. Why are you so concerned? Like I said before, he's one of us. He's puked up from hell and trying to make sense of it all. Besides, he's kind, gentle, and decent. Don't you want him for yourself? I have never thought of it that way. I'm not much older than his kids are. Neither are you. Why should that matter? I don't know. I really don't. I just never had the feeling that a relationship would work. There is too much history. You call a couple of months history? No, real history. War and stuff. History, you know. Now I am lost. What do you mean, war and stuff? The 60s, Vietnam. Oh, but you weren't even born yet. Where do you think my parents came from? Did he know your parents? I don't know. What difference does it make anyway if you did? Did he? I get old. How should I know? Well, I thought. Vietnam. You can be so thick sometimes. What do you mean? Get dressed, fix your hair, and put on some makeup. People think you're sick or something. What do you mean? Your freckles are fading away. Good, I always hated them. What's a redhead without freckles? Lucille Ball. Okay, I'll let you in that one, but we have to get going so we can make the transfer to West End. I wish you had a car. If I had a car, I couldn't support you. All right, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. They're too much trouble. They cost too much money and take up too much time. Don't I? No, not really. I think a dog or a cat would be more trouble than you. I'm sorry, that didn't come out right. Yes, it did. You really did mean it. I'm too much trouble and expense. After all we've been through together, you think I'm comparing you to pets? Aren't you? No, you're my friend. I'm just trying to get you back on your feet after some hard luck. It's been a long time. You're finally noticing? Are you mad at me? Hey, look at me. I'm not that easy to live with either. I didn't realize. You need to get out more. Yeah, I guess I do. Charlene stood in front of her closet and stared at her wardrobe. It occurred to her that she spent a lot of time staring at her clothing. Is it too revealing? Will it attract attention? Can I run in it? She settled on warm-ups and sneakers. Her stomach quivered and roiled. Her knees felt limp as she washed and dressed. Marjorie caught her staring catatonically at her reflection in the mirror. Come on. We are going to miss our transfer if we don't catch the next bus. All right. Can't a lady put on her makeup without being hurried? I thought you died in there, so I came in and looked. See, I'm alive. Cut the sarcasm and get moving. It's not like the bus is going to wait. Why don't we take a cab? Last time we took a cab, you freaked out and wouldn't get in. Besides, that's about $20 each way. Do you have a spare 40 bucks? I sure as hell don't. You made your point, now leave me alone. No way. I want to get there today. Charlene walked to the bus stop with her overcoat collar turned up. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and dark glasses. Marjorie wore her usual black slacks and a white blouse. People stared at them as they waited for the bus. It was late spring. Charlene squeezed herself into the corner of the back seat and tried desperately to look inconspicuous. Marjorie said hi to a few of her fellow passengers as she found her seat. To the other people on the bus, she was invisible once she sat down. The only person who noticed her was the baby across the aisle. Marjorie and the baby made faces at each other until the baby's mother carried her off the bus at her stop. The stop for the transfer to West End was across the street from the campus. A wave of conflicting emotions flowed through Charlene. The place held many happy memories for her. Earnest young faces from the not-too-distant past flowed through her memory. Youthful essays about all manner of esoteric and not-so-esoteric subjects associated themselves with the faces. She felt a longing to go back to her classroom, back to the work she loved. She wondered if she ever could go back. Too much had happened. She hadn't even gathered up the courage to call in when she stopped going to work. She simply didn't show up. How could she face them? She treated her work and her students so shabbily. She never finished teaching the course. She never graded the work or even read most of it. She stepped out for groceries and never came back. How would they see her? She abandoned them without even an explanation or a goodbye. Tears blurred her vision as she considered it. Don't just sit there. Come on, we have to get off here. I can't. Just do it. Don't think about it. No, not here, not now. This is where we have to catch the bus to West End. I can't do it. People are staring. What if someone sees me? So what? The bus to West End. You don't understand. I just walked out. You've been gone a long time. I know. Tears were running out from under the sunglasses. Charlene's voice was taking on a desperate edge. You're making a scene here. If you keep doing this, people will notice. You're right, I'm sorry. You okay? I don't know. I just got scared about. It's okay. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. I know. I'm sorry to be such a. Look, it's my fault. I should have seen that you weren't ready. No, this is something I am going to have to deal with. Not just now, but every day. You were right all the time. I'm just a big baby. Let's go. You sure? I would have to wait here for the bus back home anyway, right? Yeah, I guess so. Going on can't possibly be worse. The two women left the bus and stood on the street as the bus pulled away. Charlene looked fragile to Marjorie, not just emotionally, but physically as well. Marjorie was worried. Now she had two people whose lives depended on her healing abilities, and not the ones she had learned in nursing school. Benny was alone in that big house in the suburbs with all reason to live surgically removed, and Charlene was positively self-destructive. Some nerve, she thought to herself, and I'm bringing these two people together. Charlene dabbed at the tears under her sunglasses with a tissue and moved closer to Marjorie. She was glad not to be alone. She was short of breath and dizzy. Her fingers and toes felt numb. Marjorie helped her to the bench on the sidewalk and helped her sit down. Charlene was very pale. Her step was unsteady as she moved to the bench. Charlene rummaged in the trash can and pulled out a paper bag. Here, breathe into this. Why? It will make you feel better. Charlene breathed into the paper bag for a while. Slowly, the numbness and confusion fled into the corners of her consciousness, and she felt better. Thanks. What happened to me there? Anxiety attack, you hyperventilated. Too much oxygen, I diluted it with carbon dioxide by having you breathe into the paper bag. I'm sorry to be so much trouble. You're my friend. I don't consider it trouble at all. But you are always taking care of me. Who takes care of you? I'm a big girl now. I take care of myself. No, really. Marjorie thought for a while. She couldn't remember anyone taking care of her for a long time. Benny was walking upstairs with a basket of sheets and towels when the phone rang. Slackmeyer residence. Dad? Hi, Ted. It's good to hear from you. It's been driving me crazy for the longest time. What was Mom doing with Danny on Huntsville Pike? Probably going to a package store. Why Huntsville Pike? Nearest wet county. What was she doing with Danny? His mother said that it was a favor. Your mother was too drunk to drive. Hey, I'm sorry I haven't called, but I've been having trouble dealing with the fact that she's gone. I couldn't deal with the funeral, especially so long after she was killed. I got drunk and walked through the woods. After doing that, I couldn't deal with you. I know you're hurting and I know you're sick. I just couldn't find words that could make it okay. Not for you and not for me. Son, I wasn't much of a father. I realize that now. I wasn't there for you, ever. I deserved to be ignored. The three of you deserved better, and I deserved to lose her because I wasn't taking care of her either. You were lucky to have her. She always talked about you. She counted the minutes when you were due home. Sometimes it made us crazy. I hope you learn from my mistakes. The money is never worth it. I can't buy back a single moment with her, with you, or with the girls. I saw all the pictures. Your mother wasn't in very many of them. I got copies of a lot of them in the mail. Seeing them all together. Look, Dad, I wasn't the best son either. I was combative, uncooperative, and a generally unlovable kid. I don't know why you kept on coming back after the way I treated you, and the girls were worse. It never showed in the pictures or the letters. Mom never wanted to burden you with bad news. Yeah, she was like that, glass always half full. Except when she was drinking. I never saw that. You were lucky. Was I the reason that she drank? I don't know. Maybe, but even when she was drinking, she never spoke ill of you. The money isn't worth it. Yeah, I guess not. Are you spending time with your family? Not as much as I'd like to. Trust me, I know how you feel. Why did you do it though? I thought about that for a long time. I haven't been to work since the accident. I don't know. All the rationalizations I came up with wouldn't excuse me for what finally happened. How are you holding up? I have good days and bad ones. Cancer sucks. Literally. It sucks your will, it sucks your strength, it sucks your patience, and it sucks your resources. There were days that I really wanted to die, but couldn't muster the energy to do anything about it. There's this nurse. She comes around and helps out, and the people from church. How's Reverend Henry? Since this happened, he has been preaching about commitment and using your mother as an example. He has been giving me copies of the sermons. They're quite good. I wish I had him up here. Well, give my love to your wife and kids. I have to get ready for the nurse. Benny hung up the phone and started to cry. His son was turning out to be very much like him, and he felt too guilty to acknowledge it right then. He hoped that his wife was like Miranda, as a lesser woman would be gone in a heartbeat if Ted were too much like him. Absence really doesn't make the heart grow fonder. It usually breeds resentment and bitterness in all but a few people. Those few people are usually called saints. He smiled at the thought as he pictured it on a bumper sticker. Being alone was almost as bad as cancer. He felt badly about how much he forced Miranda to be alone. She was the social person in the couple. She needed people, she needed him, and he wasn't there. Charlene relaxed during the long walk from the bus stop to Benny's house. She marveled at the large, expensive houses in this part of town. She talked excitedly about the juxtaposition of architectural styles reflected in the individual buildings. Marjorie didn't understand much of what she was talking about, but enjoyed the happiness in her voice. It didn't seem like the same woman. Charlene had taken off her coat and sunglasses and was looking like a human being again. Well, we're almost there. You were right, it is quite a walk. He said that this was all scrub cedar and poverty grass when he built his house here. He built it at the end of the street so his kids wouldn't have to play in traffic. I'll bet the kids used the hill to their advantage. I don't know. He never mentioned it. Never. He talked about the location in passing when he gave me directions here. He never talks about his family much. Never. He talks about his late wife when he moves around in the house because her touch is everywhere, but he never talked much about family life there. I wonder why. Benny's house loomed largely as they approached it. It was the biggest house on a street of imposing houses. The lawn was unkempt. It looked like everyone was on an extended vacation. The curtains were drawn, and there was nothing outside to suggest any kind of recent human activity. Marjorie was used to it, but it smothered Charlene's cheerful demeanor. She shrank visibly as she considered her destination. Hey girl, cheer up. He has cancer. People with cancer can't be expected to mow lawns. Maybe we should mow it for him. Marjorie considered the sad state of the lawn and shrubbery. I think that a landscaping company is more in order here. It doesn't look that bad, really. You were the one that was spooked by it, not me. No, we could mow it and trim the shrubbery. It wouldn't take that much work. Look, girl, if you want to do that, go right ahead, but leave me out of it. I have more important things to do here. Seriously, I haven't been out much, and I could use the exercise. It would take my mind off things. Hey, if you feel peppy, 34 by it, not me. Television was what finally drove Chet back to work. It was okay as a diversion to keep awake in the cab, but a steady diet of daytime TV, even with premium cable, was stupefying on a good day and annoying on a bad one. There were only so many movies that could sustain Chet's interest for more than a few minutes. The Playboy channel had a tawdry sleaze about it that sickened him after only a short exposure. The soap operas were all the same and blended into a ghastly swill of emptiness and cheap sex. His doctor prescribed a strong antidepressant and recommended a counselor to deal with his nightmares. He was given a 2-month prescription for Seconal, which made it possible to sleep. Mostly, it was the lack of direction and a restlessness that drove him to climb back into the cab. His stomach hurt as he drove to the rail yard. He was off the Seconal for a whole week and felt confident about passing the obligatory post-absence urine test. While he was using Seconal, he couldn't drink. After he hadn't had a drink for 2 months, he really didn't feel the need for one anymore. Except for the knotted stomach, Chet felt better than he had in years. He didn't go near a locomotive at all the first day back at work. He spent it in an office filling out forms. There were forms to apply for forms. They ran off 7 copies of his doctor's note saying he could go back to work. They made 4 copies of the note from his therapist. There was the form for submitting a urine test. There was the form to apply to the union for a payment plan for his back dues, and a form to reinstate his position and seniority with the railroad. All in all, he handled over 100 pieces of paper and had 20 to take home and put in a safe place. They handed him his 20-year PIN, which he had earned 2 months before the accident, but never saw. He had forgotten about it. Chet went home exhausted, with his stomach more knotted than before. His wife greeted him with a hug, a kiss, and his favorite meal. His daughter greeted him with a storm of tears and a slammed bedroom door. Chet turned to follow her up the stairs, but reconsidered it. He was too tired to involve himself in an all-night war that no man could win. Besides, he had to go to work in the morning, and a sleep deficit was the last thing a railroad engineer needed on his first day back on the rails. It was too dangerous out there. Sleep came too easy for Chet that night. He crashed in his chair watching entertainment tonight. He went upstairs and got ready for bed. He noticed the phone cord going under Jolene's door, but decided that it could stay there because he needed to sleep. He had eaten too much, and it made him groggy. He thumped Jolene's door on the way past. Hey, girl, it might be a good idea to go downstairs and eat something. Thump. Bastard. Leave me alone. Thump. I hope those were your shoes. Go away. Chet went to bed and settled himself to a night of rest, or so he thought. He found himself back in a locomotive cab. It wasn't the comforting environs of the late model GE he was used to. It wasn't even one of the old Alcos he occasionally had to run. The plaque said Baldwin Locomotive CO 1910. 2 large black men were stoking the boiler. They were shoveling fast and furiously. The cab lurched and bucked under their feet as they crossed an impossibly high trestle. The 2 men shoveling didn't seem to notice or care as the floor lurched beneath their feet. They continued shoveling as the train hurtled through the night. The only thing revealed by the headlamp was the track ahead. The only light in the cab was the blinding glare from the firebox. There was urgency, unspoken in the air as Chet pushed the throttle to its limit. The comforting instruments and controls of his home on rails were conspicuously absent, and in their places were a steam pressure gauge, unlighted, a water pressure gauge, also unlighted, a water level sight glass, lit by the firelight, and a gauge that said Westinghouse that had numbers from 0 to 120 in increments of 10. That gauge was also unlighted. Things clattered and thumped under the floor as the cab pitched and tossed along the rails. It was hot in the cab, which completed the hellish atmosphere Chet was experiencing. The trestle turned into a hole in the woods, and the track became even more uneven. The train thundered on through cuts in the Tennessee limestone. Here and there, the tracks evened out. Those places were in the cuts. Chet's equilibrium suffered from the tossing and bouncing of the locomotive on the tracks. A figurehead swung a red lantern. As the train drew nearer, Chet could make out the shape and color of a U.S. Navy winter enlisted man's uniform. Chet backed off on the throttle and pulled the whistle cord. The sound was like no sound ever made by a train. It was the scream of all the damned of all time screamed together. The two men feeding the fire seemed used to it. It sickened Chet to his soul. Beside the sailor, the woman from the newspaper beckoned to him. It was then that Chet noticed what was used for fuel. The two black firemen were shoveling bones. Chet screamed and leapt from the cab. The train thundered past and off into the distance. A gentle female hand touched his cheek, and a female voice said to him, "It's really all right. Don't worry about it." The face from the newspaper looked down at him. He felt a heavy pain in his chest, which shot up his left arm. He woke up sweating. His wife slept quietly beside him. Off in the night a hound bayed at the moon. At least the pain in his chest was only part of the dream. He went downstairs and poured a glass of milk. He rummaged around the kitchen and found some Oreos. He sat in the dark kitchen and tried to figure out the dream. He was still there the next morning when his wife came downstairs to make breakfast for him. Chet went to the yard, with his stomach in knots. The dream lay heavy on his brain. Every part had multiple meanings. Every part tied into the one event he could never forget. The thing that scared him most was the black fireman. In his 20 years of railroading, he had never seen one, much less shared a locomotive cab with one. He had been raised in the separate but equal Southern society, of which the L&N was a microcosm. Until the dream, he had never even given that possibility the slightest thought. The dream haunted him. It turned endlessly through his brain as he walked across the yard to his assigned locomotive. He was visibly shaken as he met his partner in the cab. His name was Judge Green. He was a huge tree of a man with a gold tooth, a gold chain, a wide smile, and a very dark complexion. "Hi, I'm Judge Green. I have heard a lot about you." Hi. Didn't you play middle linebacker for Alabama?" "Yeah, that was a long time ago. I'm flattered that you remembered. I've been an Alabama fan since the early days of Bear Bryant. I've always tried to catch the games." "I thought you went pro." "I did. I played 10 minutes of one game and got hurt. I learned the value of a college football education real fast. They called you the black hole. Nothing got past you. I wondered what happened. You went to the Cowboys, if memory serves me right." "Yeah, straight from a winning college season to bankruptcy court. Man, that must have been rough. Of the lawn and shrubbery." "I'm a big boy, I can handle it." Chet felt relieved that he found some common ground. He was still nervous, but this big man in the cab with him had little in common with the men in his dream, so he relaxed a little. "Hey man, you don't look so good." "I'll be okay. It's been a while since I fell off the horse, and it was too long before I tried to get back on." "You sure?" "Uh-huh, come on. We've got a schedule to keep." The lights of the block signal moved to indicate a clear track. Chet released the air from the brakes and opened the throttle of the locomotive, the first of four. For late model G diesels rumbled louder, and the train started moving out of the yard. Judge picked up the radio and walked up the deck to watch the switches, and Chet watched the instruments and listened to the noises of a starting train. It was comforting to be moving on the rails again. For the first time in a long time, Chet felt at peace. A female voice came out of the back of his mind. It said, "It's going to be okay." Chet shivered a little, but went back to his work. They were still traveling slowly, though still accelerating as they crossed the Cumberland and picked up the southbound main line. Chet hated the drive for economy that the railroad had taken. It was all single track now, with traffic both ways. He hated being at the total mercy of the signals and their human operators, who only knew the signals and switches as lights on a board in a control room somewhere. The union had complained loudly when they started tearing up track, but politics prevailed, as well as a shrinking bottom line in the rail freight business. It was all single track now. Here and there, because of the terrain, there were grade crossings, even on the main line. Chet's hand was sweaty on the whistle cord as the train approached every one of them. He had to swallow hard to control his dread. Judge Green was oblivious to Chet's internal drama. He sat in his seat and worked the Nashville, Tennessean crossword. The judge worked in ink. Occasionally, he would look into space for a clue, but he was in a different world. Chet was thankful because he had no idea how to interact, beyond what little that had passed between them. There wasn't even a TV in the cab. Chet's mind roiled like the sky before a tornado. Daytime and summer helped some, but stray thoughts collided with one another and spawned other thoughts. The train reached its rated speed, and Chet moved the throttle to maintain it. The ammeter for locomotive number 4 jiggled a little. Chet hoped that the generator on that unit would hold until they crossed the state line and started the downgrade again. Losing a locomotive on an upgrade on his first day back was just too bad an omen to consider. The core temperature gauge on that generator was reading hot. That usually meant trouble. The new rolling stock wasn't as tough as the old stuff, even though it was much easier to operate. He didn't remember as many breakdowns on the Fairbanks Morses that he started out on. Of course, they didn't have air conditioning or carpeting on the floors. He had read about new equipment that had AC power and were predominantly computer controlled. He was glad that the L&N kept with the familiar on his run. Change. It sneaks up, he thought to himself. The ammeter jiggled. The voltmeter jiggled too now. The core temperature was getting close to the red. Judge was into his puzzle. The decision hurt his head. Should he shut down number 4 without discussion and insult his new conductor/fireman, or should he say something first? Hey, Judge, look at number 4. Holy shit, Chet, you should have said something. Think we should shut her down? Yeah, I don't think a fire here would be a good idea. The noise in the cab got louder as the other 3 locomotives took up the load from number 4. The core temperature gauges reflected the change in load instantaneously. Judge took out a piece of paper and started scribbling figures. He keyed the numbers into the computer, and dispatch answered with permission to be late and to slow a little. Chet longed for the double tracks. This would definitely screw up the schedule for the entire eastern seaboard, as the freight would be late to Birmingham, and the northbound trains would have to wait for them to clear the track. It made his head buzz. The steeple from Sterling College appeared in the window. Just beyond Sterling Forks was the beginning of the downgrade that would allow them to relax a little. The coolant temperatures of the diesels were starting to rise, and the downgrade would let them cool down too. Judge had shut off the air conditioning to conserve energy, so Chet was starting to feel hot too. It seemed too hot for the little time with no AC, but he ignored it. His head ached too much. The Huntsville Pike crossing loomed ahead. Chet felt dizziness and a sharp pain in his left shoulder going down his left arm. The color drained out of everything. He fell to the floor of the cab. A female voice said, "Everything will be all right." The face from the paper appeared in front of him. There was a young sailor with her. He could hear a train rumbling, off into the distance. 35. Charlene walked around the house to the garage. The sight from the street was